So here we are tonight, September the 6th. Should be autumn, pre-autumn. So we're continuing, and I think we'll have one more session after this of the Bendōwa, the endeavor of the way, Dōgen's first main writing, which is really about this incredible trust that he wants to instill in us about sitting, about Zazen sitting. And that trust is really going to be the emphasis tonight. And it's something that speaks, was important for him to communicate clearly to his first followers way back in the early 1200s when he first came back from China. And at that time, many people were involved in anything but sitting. So, there was the main practices were of chanting sutras, chanting all the sutras, and Theravada and Mahayana sutras, Lotus Sutra, Dhamma Sutra, all these, long things they chant in monasteries for hours, chanting the name of the Buddha over and over and over again, Nembutsu Buddha, and also the study of the sutras. And his emphasis on Zazen, on just sitting, is a kind of counterpoint to that, because that's, what he rejected when he left Japan, and he was looking for an alternative because he saw that this just wasn't producing the results. What do we mean by results? Yeah, show me the money. He's the results he wanted was to find people who were truly good and wise, and not just, hoping that chants and reciting names will do the work for them. Okay. So he wasn't finding that sense, that intuitive sense of transmission, that you feel like, this person really has something special. And there's an insight there that I want as well. I want to have it as well. And that it inspires me as far as a human example, that this is what the mind is capable of. So he went to Song, China. That was the era then, and that's what he was exposed to in different monasteries. He came back and he wanted to, re-energize the Dharma with the school that he then started, the Soto school, which is a school of just sitting. So he kind of went full 180 degrees turn. Said that, and we'll see this in a bit, where he really belittles and pretty much, despairs of the type of ritualism that had happened. And, it's kind of magical thinking that we still do today. And we don't do it in a big way, but we do it in subtle ways, hoping to get, some results from something that we do, like a sort of a recipe for success. And we approach our kind of practice that way too, in a certain way. And because we think that something's always missing, and we just need to sort of accumulate the goods, and then we'll notice a change. And Dōgen is kind of suggesting something different. So I want to look at that a bit, this text. I don't know if you have it. I have it, but and maybe that's good enough. But we've read the first couple pages, and after the first 3 pages, I think. First 2 pages, 4 pages. I think we're at page 6. I could be wrong. Is that true, Jonathan? You're probably better with numbers than me. Page 6? Yeah?
Yes, Daniel, that's correct.
Good. All right, so here we are, page 6. And again, I want to remind us that when we read something like Bendōwa and most of Dōgen's writings in the Shobogenzo, it's not a text that we study like philosophy. You know, if you're reading Descartes or something, or Derrida, you know, you want to understand, like, what does this paragraph or sentence mean? You know, here, if there's something that we don't quite grasp, it's because usually, it's not because the language is so obscure. It may be poetic, and it eludes our grasp on purpose. Like, it's intentionally trying to elude and evade a kind of intellectualizing of it, you know, because that's exactly what he's pointing to as a big mistake. That the study, when he talks about studying the way, he really means practicing it, internalizing it, you know, so that even the Buddha said in one of his first sutras that you know, you have to rely to the Kamalas, I think, that community. He said you have to rely on your own understanding. You have to rely on your own realization of it. So Dōgen has this sort of interesting approach then to words and study. Like, he writes down this whole thing in order to help us. He tells us at the end of this, he's doing it, and you know, to help us out, right? To help us understand. But the way we have to understand is by approaching the text differently, and it means that we have to understand a little bit by not understanding, not intellectualizing it, and sort of letting go of the concept and trying to get a kind of, for lack of other terms, sort of intuitive kind of flavor, right? I'm not going to say an intuitive grasp, but an intuitive flavor of it, which may encourage you then to, you know, to sit, because that's what he's doing here. His whole thing is a sort of the whole Bendōwa, if I could summarize it, it's a pep talk for Zazen. That's what it is, okay? But it's a pep talk by Dōgen. So then it's like a pep talk worth reading, because it goes deep, you know, because he doesn't want to just inspire our minds to take our Zazen more seriously. He wants to inspire our fingertips and our earlobes and, you know, our shoulders and our toes. Like, that's what he wants to inspire. So we have to kind of listen with our bodies as well, and not just with, you know, our prefrontal cortex, right? So, as I said, you know, I'm going to read through some of this, and I'm not going to say, okay, this line, this line, this line. I want us to get a sort of intuitive feel for it. And of course, if there's something you say, like, you know, I really don't understand that, of course we have to, like, you know, look at it again, right? But let's take a little look now. Okay, I'm at the paragraph at the top where it says, this broad awakening, okay? This broad awakening comes back to you, and a path opens up to you to help you invisibly. Thus, in Zazen, you invariably drop away body and mind, cut through fragmented concepts and thoughts from the past, and realize the central Buddha Dharma. You cultivate Buddha activity in innumerable practice places of Buddha Tathagatas everywhere. Provide the opportunity for everyone to engage in ongoing Buddhahood and vigorously uplift the Dharma of going beyond Buddha. So as we see, he's really over the top in the way he's talking here about the Buddha Dharma, right? But just to look at the last comment of his, you uplift the Dharma of going beyond Buddha. What is beyond Buddha? You know, there's that you know, cute saying, if you meet the Buddha on the way by one of the koans, you know, kill the Buddha. And this is Dogen's version of it, is that it's the Dharma of going beyond Buddha. Going beyond names and concepts, okay? Going beyond our ideas and our sort of expectations. Oh yeah, this is what the path should produce. You know, everyone's gonna have their own awakening. The Buddha, Shakyamuni, you know, Gautama, Buddha, had his own awakening that was unique to him at his time and place, you know. And it does awaken a sort of a universal mind, right? But the way we then express it in our lives is going beyond Buddha, and it's going to you, you know. It's we don't say Buddha anymore. You say it's you, you know. And that's going beyond Buddha. Is that there's nothing to imitate here. You know, you can't imitate Buddha, right? You have to go beyond Buddha to find it within yourself. And the other thing that I wanted to point out here is that a path opens up to help you invisibly. That's kind of also a really strong statement of trust. And this is where I'm getting at here. It's an invisible path. Now that makes it difficult for most of us, because most of us want something really clearly defined, or we need it clearly defined. We want clear, instructions, and we kind of want, rules to follow. And if those rules then become overwhelming, sometimes we feel like we have to reject them all. Like, say, if this is too much of a religious approach. But here, this path is invisible. Really, it again is placing really full responsibility on each person then to find that path within their own lives. So if the path is opening up invisibly, you know, and it's really this path of Dharma in your life, then it's really quite a practice, you know, to follow it. And think of that paradox. You have to follow an invisible path. How do you, it's a koan. How do you follow an invisible path? So even with the Zazen, the school that he's opening up of Soto Zen, which is based on Shikantaza. And Shikantaza is just sitting. And it's really sort of famous for giving very little instruction. Okay, sit down, don't move, and shut up. Those are the three main instructions, right? And the rest is sort of extra for people who want to get attached. But compared to others, I'm being facetious, but compared to other schools where there's so much instruction on the moment-to-moment sensations and labeling and everything, that you can get in some of these schools that are quite helpful. I mean, Zazen is saying in the end, it's all very helpful, but you just got to forget that and just sit. You have to completely surrender to this experience. And that's the invisible path. So that's a koan we can all carry with us. The path of Buddhahood that is going beyond Buddha is an invisible path. And I'm following it as I speak. What does that mean, in our lives individually? So, and that's why he said, you cultivate Buddha activity at innumerable practice places of Buddha Tathagatas everywhere, and provide the opportunity for everyone to engage in ongoing Buddhahood. So again, if it's an invisible path, then he's saying, but don't worry, because you're opening up practice places everywhere, and you're enabling everybody to do that as well. So the amazing thing about the invisible path is that if it's invisible, then it's everywhere. And it also involves everyone. So your path is no longer, and this is a very important Mahayana kind of precept or tenet. The strong Mahayana tenet is that your practice is for the sake of all beings. So this is why he says here, you're opening up, you're enabling all beings to practice. All right. Provide the opportunity for everyone to engage in this practice. So that is sort of the big vision that we carry with us in our own specific small point, right? This small seat that I have, is an invisible path that is realizing Buddhahood everywhere and giving the opportunity to all others to also practice. Now, you might say, well, that's just a huge, great, wonderful, fanciful idea that doesn't mean much to me when I'm just dealing with my own crap on my seat. And that's true. On the relative level, that's true. But part of the trust we need to cultivate is opening up to the possibility that your activity is bigger than you think. Remember, a lot of this is trying to bypass our sort of our limitation of thoughts. To just sort of put it on pause, so that I stop depreciating my individual and sometimes very local activities, like super local, like sitting in one place. And I don't depreciate that as a small thing, or as I should be like, I don't know, feeding the hungry and stopping wars and protesting in the streets or something, and that's big activity. Really? Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. This is asking us a bit to consider. You know, if your activity is for the sake of all beings, then it's big activity, right? If it's just to like, I don't know, feed the fires of like revolution, then it might be small activity. If it's us and them, it's small activity. If it's all of us together, it's big activity. And he's going to make it even bigger here, because right now in this paragraph, he's just talking about people. And the next paragraph is, you know, his prelude, where we'll see the echoes in the Mountains and Rivers Sutra. And the Mountain and River Sutra is basically an expanded version of this next paragraph. So most of the themes that you find in Dōgen's Shobogenzo, of all the things about zazen and nature and you know, immediate Buddhahood and the unity of practice and enlightenment as one thing, not two things, are all found in this initial essay. So in a sense, this essay is the kernels of all his thought that come afterwards, you know, that he expanded on in other fascicles that he wrote. So the next paragraph, then we'll see that if you've read the Mountains and Waters Sutra that we've read together sometimes, you'll immediately recognize this. So I'm right there where it says, because earth, grass, trees, walls, tiles, and pebbles in the world of phenomena in the 10 directions all engage in Buddha activity. Those who receive the benefits of the wind and water are inconceivably helped by the Buddha's transformation, splendid and unthinkable, and intimately manifest enlightenment. Those who receive these benefits of water and fire widely engage in circulating the Buddha's transformation based on original realization. Because of this, all those who live with you and speak with you also receive immeasurable Buddha virtue, practice continuously, and extensively unfold the endless, unremitting, unthinkable, unnameable Buddha Dharma throughout the entire world of phenomena. So, it just gets better. But as we see here, the vision is big. And the vision is that every single aspect of this world is expressing an awakened reality. Now, the reason we don't, we're not aware of that is because the very next sentence, I mean, he predicts our objection. And that's why in the very next sentence he says, all this, however, does not appear within perception. Now, in a sense, that's kind of a coy to say, but it's true. It's true. You know, this is a vision of reality, okay, that as someone who wants to have some faith this is what's needed in order to sustain your practice. Because otherwise, things are just too bad. You know, if you look around and you see it in the eyes of the way the world presents the world, you know, the way unawakened people present the world, or unrealized, it's a pretty depressing place, you know? Or it's overly optimistic and all's good, right? But there's another vision to have, okay? And it's this vision of an awakened place where all things and all people have Buddha nature and are engaged in their own practice. The practice of a pebble, the practice of a waterfall, the practice of a blade of grass, the practice of your neighbor. You know, maybe she's practicing sweeping the floor. Maybe another neighbor is practicing watching TV. I mean, what is the practice that everyone's engaged in? You know, it's being a sentient being at this time and place, at this moment in creation, and trying to make the best of it. You know, trying to get through unscathed. So this is, you know, all beings, when we see that with that sort of generous eye, it sort of sacralizes the world in a sense. So it's not a, it is, you could say, a religious vision. But without that, we don't have much impetus to practice. We're just kind of trying to, you know, create a bubble of peace within ourselves instead of connect with all others. But if we don't have this vision and we want to connect with all others because the teachings, you know, show us that there's sort of a non-self and interdependency, interbeing. So to have a real, true realization is to realize your connection with all others. But if they're not Buddha, then you're just going to find yourself like in a mess. So this is what Dōgen's trying to sort of give us a bit of a preliminary view. That in order to encourage us when we feel like our zazen is just like sitting, dealing with not much, and looking around us and seeing that I don't want to deal with this. This is just too, you know, what am I talking about? Awakened exhaust pipe of the bus. Like, what is that? You know, awakened garbage on the streets where people litter. I mean, what is he getting at here? And I think it's a type of trust and faith in the way that is very foreign to many of us now. You know, that either we pray hoping to get some, if we're praying to God, we hope often it's a transactional relationship. I give prayer and I receive some benefit, right? Or if I sit, that I also bring that kind of equation into it. That if I sit enough, then at least my mind will be better, even though everything else is, you know, going down the drain. And Dōgen and his sort of, this sort of vision is kind of creating a different sense of honor and reverence to the world around us, even when it's not pretty. And that's a different approach, because often we look around and we just see like good, good, bad, 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 or like problem, solution, problem, solution. But before we start getting involved in problems and solutions, can we see it as a sort of a Buddha place? And what does that mean? So again, I don't know, but I know that there is another way of seeing, and Dōgen is offering this as a sort of an invisible path.
Daniel?
Yeah.
I think that Asaf is raising his hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't see. Yeah. I'm with you.
Yeah. it was I raised the hand when I heard you talking about that when you're sitting, you have everybody benefits in mind, and when the people go to the protest, there is a division there, and there it's not everybody. Everybody's benefit in mind in the way you said it, and then it seemed that you said that one is better than the other because one is including everybody and the other not. I think that's a little bit missing something, because there is the third way, which is the person that is sitting and has everybody in mind, goes to the protest, and then he still has everybody in mind, and also the protest there has a part of the vision that they want everybody's benefits to be there, but it has to go through challenges and difficulties that may not in that way seem to include everybody's mind on the short term, but people see it as the vision that this leads to more unity. So I think when the person who practices sits at home and avoid the protest because he thinks that is a place of division and I want to be in unity, I disagree with that. I think that when that person goes there, he brings also the unity there and strengthens the ability for the vision of unity.
Yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree. It's not either or at all. And within one person, it can also shift, during one time as well. And that takes a lot of mindfulness to know that, whether you're getting caught up with some negative energy or division when you're in a place, and then to pause and try to recenter yourself, to let go of aversion and attachment. So yeah, that's important too, because those energies keep coming up and those habits of mind. But yeah, if you can bring in and maintain some balance and clarity when there's a lot of division around you, that's definitely, the right approach. And you shouldn't stay on your seat out of fear that you'll be sucked into the division, because sometimes our equanimity and balance needs to be put to the test. Sometimes we need to have it challenged to strengthen it. Like, trees that are blown in the wind get stronger than if there's no wind. So yeah, definitely. Of course, it's not an either or situation. I was just using those two kind of examples as thinking that to emphasize the fact that just sitting engages in something bigger than just your place.
Your own self, yeah. That aspect is what you're talking about. Something also I saw in the protests now, that there were groups that came and did group meditations during the protest, several groups, and gatherings together, and then they stayed in meditation within the hectic protest. So that, I think, relates to what you're the aspect that you're raising. So I think it is important for connecting with the vision, to, if you want to have more impact in the real world, to join things that are outside of yourself. When you also the practice can give you strength for that, as you said, to see how much wind you can take.
Yeah, exactly. And when you feel like the wind is a little too strong, you need to step back. And that's an important awareness too, is that when your equanimity and your inner balance is sort of being lost, it's time to pause and step back from that, weather system.
Yeah, that's hard to
Yeah.
know
especially if you're in a
yourself.
different place.
Sorry?
Yeah, especially if you're in a situation.
Oh,
But
yeah.
it's essential though. It's essential. Because otherwise, like a lot of the sort of young trees and flowers you've been cultivating will get, blown away. Yeah, it's important to do. And I think we don't test ourselves with the most difficult situation. We start on daily, that invisible path. Again, I love that sort of term, that it's an invisible path, because wherever you are, you can find yourself on the path. Oh, I didn't know the path led here. Oh yeah, that's because it's an invisible path. So wherever you're going, you'll find that you'll be challenged in the ways that are often appropriate to your place. So you put yourself in situations, you'll find yourself in situations that, oh, this is the amount of wind that's necessary to strengthen my inner balance. And he uses the terms here of wind and air and fire and water, the four elements, the classical, Chinese elements. And I think they're used, because we find those four elements in our practice, like in our breath and in the heat and air and the ground we're walking on and the seat we're sitting on, is the earth. Okay, and your blood and your saliva and your tears and what you drink and your tea and water, that's the water element. And you have all those elements going on that can bring us back to a sense of presence. So there are many ways to kind of balance yourself when you're finding yourself sort of pulled too far in a certain direction. And that direction meaning aversion or attachment, And that's happening when we're influenced by an environment where there's too much wind, meaning there's too much like negative or positive energy even, So I'm attached or aversive. Say when we're talking about protest. And there, if you come back to your physicality, you may not be able to initially come back to your sense of breath, because the breath may be hard and may be subtle and may be, very subtle. But you can come back to the earth element of the ground you're standing on, and the water element of, the humidity or your tears or your blood or your saliva or the water that you can drink. You can come back to the air element of the breath and the fire element of the temperature of the place you're in and the temperature of your body. So, those are just useful kind of reminders of your present moment when you find yourself like strongly challenged. And to, again, right, emphasizing, again, the last sentence of the second paragraph. Because of this, all those who live with you and speak with you also receive immeasurable Buddha virtue. Okay? And that's something that, again, we underestimate. Right? Because we often think that we have this sort of false expectation that if we're practicing well and then we kind of exhibit it in some way, that people will respond and react and change, mainly, like change for the better because of our practice. No, it's much more subtle than that. It's much more subtle than that. Like, it's like raindrops falling on the ground. How many raindrops does it take to make a tree grow? I don't know, innumerable ones. But they're all from those single drops. But if we expect that each drop is going to cause the tree to grow, we're going to be really disappointed. But yet, each drop is making the tree grow. Right? And that's why he says here, okay, all of this does not appear within our perception, because it's on a subtle level, and we're very existing on a pretty gross level, and surface level. That we want to see the difference, And the difference is, you know, a lot of it's happening underground. So that's why I'm saying, you know, everybody we meet and speak to is being affected by this. And being affected in the other way too. You know, if we're not practicing, then our selfishness or our, you know, irritation and negativity affects them too, right? So either way, people are being deeply affected by our practice or our lack of. So all this, however, does not appear within perception. Because it is unconstructedness in stillness, it is immediate realization. If practice and realization were two things, as it appears to an ordinary person, each could be recognized separately. But what can be met with recognition is not realization itself, because realization is not reached with a discriminating mind. Okay, so this is really the heart of one of his teachings that we saw in the Genjo Koan, where he uses a term called practice realization in Japanese. He made one term out of this, out of a word, practice realization. And his emphasis here is that practice and realization are not two things. They're one thing. They're one thing. And we expect to see it as two things because we're using a discriminating mind, he says, which is sort of the intellectual like analysis. Okay, here's my practice, here's the result. Here's my practice, here's the result. You know, and he's saying the practice is the result, right? The practice is the result. It's not a means to an end. It's an end in itself. Can we ever sit in zazen, seeing our sitting as an end fully in itself, even if the end result that you're meeting is restlessness and discomfort? Yeah. But yet that's a full realization, because the restlessness and discomfort are just one shadow and one small level and layer of that sitting. You know, we look at the surface and we think, oh, you know, that's what my sitting is. It's this mental energy of worry and restlessness. But what about the realization of your spine and your knees and your toes? You know, he talks about grasses and pebbles and such. So the full body mind experience, we judge by just a surface sort of slice. You know, like what are my thoughts doing? Okay. And he's describing a sort of a much more global and holistic, organic understanding of Zazen, which is that your sitting right now is a fully realized experience. That you're not practicing to become enlightened. Practice is an expression of enlightenment. You practice because of awakening, not in order to awaken. So that's also a deep level of, you could say, trust in your practice. That just even the decision and the sitting in itself, stopping, and the silence and the stillness is expressing an awakened moment. And it's not because you're thinking great thoughts. Your thoughts have nothing to do with it. You're pausing, you're letting everything be awakened as it is, not because you made it into something. It's very hard for us, for we who want to control, you know, we want to shape reality in a certain way, and especially the reality of our minds, we want to shape. But he's saying it's already in perfect shape. It's already in perfect shape. And your sitting is simply to fully acknowledge that. Hard for us to do. But as I said, this is, again, a pep talk for our sitting, is to encourage us so that even when you're feeling like I'm so distracted and, you know, racing mind, or I'm so dull and bored, while I'm sitting here for a few minutes or half an hour, however long you sit. You know. And then just recall Dōgen saying, you know, that because it's in stillness, it's immediate realization. You know? So just the stillness is full realization. Realization of what? That's the thing. If you start to unpack it, you've turned it into, you know, a handy concept. Right? But there's really nothing we can say other than it's a perfect sitting. And remember, when we talk about perfect here, we don't mean good or bad. You know, we don't mean good or bad. Like it was a perfect day. That means it went according to my hopes, plans, and expectations. It exceeded my expectations. It was perfect. No, here perfect means it's complete as it is. It was a full realization of this moment. Right? Now, so we want to try to explore in our sitting, what does it mean to have a full realization of your moment? To really open completely to what it means to be here right now with the pleasure and pain, with the resistance and grasping. So all of that, and the stillness, and the motion. What does that mean? To fully realize the reality of this moment.
May I ask a question? Do you think that according to Dōgen or to Dōgen's tradition, is there a certain point in practice where it becomes clear that there is no distinction between practice and realization? Like I think of something like the ox herding pictures, and it seems to include a process like the return to the market is in the end of a process.
That's a great echo. Well, here it's less of a, you see the path that we see in that, the ox herding pictures, the midpoint there, which is the circle that's empty, right? Maybe 7 or 8, right? That full emptiness, that full realization, okay? And then you come out of it. But in the end, he ends up back where he started, right? Like that's the end point, is the market. It wasn't, you know, it was the circle that led him. He started and then he ended up pretty much back where he started. So where does that happen, that unity of practice and realization? So in Dōgen, he's saying that it's in the perfect stillness of your zazen, the perfect stillness of your zazen. And that isn't necessarily a distant goal, right? But it's a present reality that you can have stillness even when you have thought. And in fact, the stillness is there with the thought. And the stillness is what enables you to even know your thoughts. Right? So it's not something that is like now I've realized it all the time, but it's there all the time. Right? That stillness is the nature of your mind. This is what we're talking about in the zazen. And that stillness is something that if we become more comfortable with it, even as a concept, we become more comfortable with it, you know. And don't think that stillness is the opposite of motion. That's a mistake. Stillness is not the opposite of motion, right? Stillness is a fundamental nature of the mind, right? It's the mirror It's the still water that reflects all things. Right? So in that situation of life, stillness is motion, like practice is enlightenment. So the nature of mind is enlightenment. If we can understand that it includes our thoughts also, at what point then on the path? Well, at this point. And again, we have a moment of awakening, sort of, a moment called like a satori. Wow, boom, you kind of like get it and you're still. Your mind is like awake and observing, and you see things clearly as they are. And there's absolutely nothing to say about it. The next moment, you're thinking about how many things you haven't done that you got to get done today. And it starts to make you worried, right? And then that calm clarity seems completely clouded over and like a lost dream. And then you think, oh, I need to cultivate it more to make it constant. Well, here's the trap, is that wanting to have a certain state of mind as a constant thing is a very strong spiritual desire or spiritual materialism, right? That we kind of are judging our realization by how constant it is. So we think that like an enlightened person, if I can finally just like get it to happen more often, like then that's what enlightenment is. It's like these moments, but all the time. Right? But in this understanding though, with Dōgen and Zen, specifically his school, right? The path is always leading here. And this is something really fundamental, is that it's a long path, it's a hard path, it's arduous, and it leads right here to this moment. This is the paradox, is that the path leads here. So then why do I go on the path if it's here? Because if you don't go on the path, you won't get here. You see, that's like the paradox we gotta deal with all the time. If I don't practice, I won't realize. But if I'm not realized, then practice won't mean anything. So we have to start expanding our approach in a way that can perhaps consider that I'm having, my mind is realized and I'm having a more open perception is possible now, not in a future time. I think a lot of our meditation practice is trying to reclaim the present as a place that is much more open than we usually take it. And so when we talk about a path, this is the ultimate paradox of our practice, is that the path leads to now, right? And not to the future. So if we can sort of, just recall that truth more, then we'll find ourselves with more opportunities, moment by moment, to realize the stillness. And what is the stillness? Is that clarity of perception of what's happening now. In another word, we could say it's mindfulness. Mindfulness is a moment. So, it's not really answering the question, but
Wonderful answer, thank you.
But it's here, and we simply don't. We spend a lot of time thinking that it's going to happen in the future. One day I'll be better. And you know what? We probably won't be. We'll be different. So I want to finish with one last thing here. And it's on, and this is the last paragraph before the questions. the rest of his text is sort of questions that he anticipates people will have. Or questions that students asked him in the past. And then sort of he wrote them down. And some of them are really relevant for us and some of them aren't. But I'm only gonna, for the last session on the Bendōwa, I'm only gonna choose like 2 or 3 of his questions to look at, because they're questions that any honest practitioner would ask, whether you're in the 1200s or you're in the 21st century. We're asking the same questions that some of his students asked, and that's why I'll come up with 1 or 2 of them. If you do happen to read it ahead of time and you join next week and there's one of the questions you think like, wow, you know, I want to look at that together, then you should do that. But otherwise, I'll pick 2 or 3 that I think, hey, you know, this is a question that we should be asking, and you know, he asked for. Bye. So here's the last thing. Okay. Now he's going to go with the last 2 paragraphs. He's going to give us a big vision, and then he's going to say, okay, you'll see what he says. This being so, the zazen of even one person at one moment imperceptibly accords with all things and fully resonates through all time. Remember, imperceptibly, perceptibly, that's the key word there. Thus, in the past, future, and present of the limitless universe, this zazen carries on the Buddha's transformation endlessly and timelessly. Each moment of zazen is equally the wholeness of practice, equally the wholeness of realization. Okay? We got to remember, you don't need to sit for 100 years. You need to sit for one true moment. And that one true moment is as true whether it's by the Buddha or in this moment right now. Right? It rings throughout the whole universe as this is real and this is true. And you got to take that moment with full heart and trust, because that's everything. You know, the future is not made up of a lot of time. It's made up of one moment and then another moment. And if you can be fully, truly still and clear in one moment, then you realize everything. You may forget it the next moment. That doesn't matter, because it's this single moment that matters the most. If you can put all your heart and mind into that one moment, it'll transform your reality. That transformation may only last one moment, but it was true. It was true. And finally, this is so, not only while sitting. Okay, remember, zazen is not only sitting. Like a hammer striking emptiness, before and after, its exquisite sound permeates everywhere. How can it be limited to this time and space? Myriad beings all manifest original practice, original face. It is impossible to measure. Okay, that's all I want to say. Is that how can it be limited to sitting? It's not. Okay, it's not limited to sitting. It's every activity. It's every moment that we. Thank you, Annie. It's every moment that we are bringing in that stillness of mind, the stillness that can observe the thoughts, the stillness that can observe the emotions, the stillness that can observe clearly the phenomena around me, the heat, the cold, the anger, the love, all those experiences of what it means to be fully awake at this time in history, at this moment in your life. How can it be limited to sitting? It's not. It's all things, all activities. And this is the invisible path that leads through all moments of your life and mine. So, before we end, is there anything else anyone would like to say before we sit for a moment quietly? So let us sit for a moment quietly. Come back to the silence and the stillness of our just sitting.